Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, we are breaking this up into two parts. And if you can tell by the title, today I'm going to be reacting to and sharing my thoughts and things that I noticed in the Evan Rachel Wood HBO documentary special, Phoenix Rising. And this is going to be all about episode 1, which was titled Don't Fall. Now, if you have no idea what this is in relation to, there is a Marilyn Manson, Evan Rachel Wood kind of scandal going on, accusations of domestic and sexual assault. There's a lot going on right now, and I did do a video prior to this one, a couple videos ago, talking about the beginning of Marilyn Manson and Evan Rachel Wood's relationship, where they met, how long they were dating, who was accusing who of what, things like that. Now, a couple disclaimers that I want to get into before we begin this video is, I think in the last video I said that they met in 2005, and a few of you said it was actually August of 2006, so I may have gotten that date wrong, my fault, but I mean at the same time, potato. I guess it doesn't really matter because it's all in the past now, so whether they met in 2005 or 2006, I don't know. Another thing is, I said in that video that 16 women have come forward with similar accusations against Marilyn Manson, and I talked about how that was really sad and it really broke my heart, etc., etc. Well, it has been brought to my attention as well that quite a few of those victims have actually been discredited based on them using Pinterest pictures as their evidence, or not having any evidence, or even court just completely dismissing their case altogether, statute of limitations, lack of evidence, fake evidence, etc., etc. So I think someone told me that it went from about 16 alleged victims down to about maybe 5. So, when I was first doing my research, I read the Rolling Stone article where it said like 16 women have come forward. And I mean, obviously that crushed me because I'm a fan of both parties here. I'm not one side over the other. But, that did kind of crush me when I saw that it was 16 victims. But apparently that is not the case. It is not 16 victims. And also, another thing is, as it stands here today, there is absolutely no solid evidence or proof that Marilyn Manson did anything to any of these women, including Evan Rachel Wood. There have been a few things discredited against the prayer kneeler that Evan Rachel Wood supposedly broke from being in so much pain after being whipped and tased, that she broke this prayer kneeler in half. And that has now been proven to be wrong because there was a photograph taken of this specific prayer kneeler that Manson has in his house, and it is perfectly intact. So, I mean, there's just a lot, but I did just want to say like a few of those disclaimers. A couple other ones are, again, like I said, I'm not a fan of one side over the other. I'm not Team Manson. I'm not Team Evan. I do want to wait until more evidence gets, produced. Another thing is, I don't want anyone to compare this to the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard trial. Two completely different things. Let's not compare the two. I don't think that's fair. And another thing is, I will not tolerate any sort of bullying in my comments. I told you guys in my last video that I want to have a discussion. I want this to be civil. Let's just talk. Let's not argue. And the comments on that video were okay for a while, and then after about, 5 days of it being up or so, people started getting really ugly, and I always hold comments on approval, especially for videos like that. And when I was going through them, I was not very happy with what I was seeing. Like, you guys, let's not get mad at people because their opinion doesn't match yours, okay? We are all people here. We're all differing opinions here. Let's not fight over opinions. That is ridiculous. Like, this case doesn't necessarily affect our lives directly, so let's not raise our blood pressure over something like this, and let's not fight with people, okay? That's mean. If someone's in the comments and they say, hey, like, I think Manson is innocent, don't attack them underneath and say, oh, no, he's not, he did this. Or if someone says, like, I'm a fan of Evan, or I believe Evan, don't attack them for, their opinions, okay? So let's just not do that, all right? Because it's exhausting. Okay, So, let's get into this video. So, Evan Rachel Wood came out with this documentary on HBO in March of 2022, I believe, March 15th, 2022. And it was a 2-episode documentary where she goes through the beginning of her life all the way through the ending of her naming her abuser, which is Marilyn Manson. So, it talks about her childhood, her acting career, how she met Manson, the abuse she went through, the alleged abuse she went through with Manson, things like that. So, this first episode, I actually liked the first episode a little more than the second one. The second one I thought was a little, I don't know, we'll get into that in the next video. But this one, I thoroughly enjoyed it. A lot of you did tell me that I would probably have a hard time watching this documentary due to my own personal traumas. And yes, it was hard. I actually got sick halfway through. I can't remember if it was this episode or the next episode where I actually got sick halfway through. Not like, I didn't like puke or anything, but I got really lightheaded and I had to go have like diarrhea like 3 times. Like, it was not a good time to watch, but I did watch it. It was very emotional. It was very hard to listen to. Yeah, let's get into it. So the beginning of this documentary talks about Evan Rachel Wood, her brother, her family, her childhood. It sounds like she had a very fun childhood for the most part. Like her family was very involved in theater and acting, and Evan Rachel Wood and her brother actually started acting very, very young and doing theater. And Evan actually received her SAG award at around 5 or 6 years old, which is pretty amazing. Now, I don't really know what a SAG award is, but I know it has something to do with acting, so that's pretty remarkable for someone that young to have that much of an accomplishment, you know what I mean? And she did also talk about how there was some violence in her home, how her parents argued, and there was some, turmoil in the family, which usually, I knew they were gonna do that because for this type of documentary, they want to gain sympathy right off the bat, right? So I was like, okay, here we go. Here's the humdrum childhood story. No offense, okay, let's just be real for a second. Everyone here, every single one of you watching this video right now has had something happen in their childhood that wasn't that great, right? Like either a death or a family that fought or divorce or something or other, trauma of some sort. So I was kind of like, bleh, when they did that, because it's like, yeah, us too, girl, like, us too, we didn't have it all that easy either, but I knew they were going to do that because you just kind of have to, like, for something like this, getting sympathy right off the bat is going to help you, right? I mean, I get it, going through something like that in your childhood is never easy to get through or go through, but unfortunately, it's just something that is all too common in a lot of our childhoods. So when Evan Rachel Wood was about 9 years old, her and her mother actually packed a bag and flew to Los Angeles, and her brother Ian, I think that's his name, Ian stayed in North Carolina with their father. So it was Evan's brother and the father in North Carolina, and Evan and her mom flew to LA when she was just 9 years old. And that's when Evan started getting more and more into the spotlight. She started doing more, like movies, appearances, things like that. And after she did the movie 13, which was in 2003, Evan Rachel Wood was maybe about 14, 15 years old, so very, very young. And if you've ever seen the movie 13, that is a pretty mature role for someone to take on. Like, some of the scenes she had to act out, like she had to make out with Luke in the movie. His name was Luke. He was like a 24-year-old male that she had to do a makeout scene with. And she kind of talked about how the industry really kind of started to mature her before she was mature, you know what I mean? She described it as her being just a kid doing all of these adult scenes, and the movies that she did after 13 kind of followed in that adult role, even though she wasn't really an adult. So it's almost like the industry had this huge effect on her, and it gave everyone in the industry and everyone around her this perception of her that she was actually older and more mature than she actually was. She was so, she knew how to act, right? She was always a very, very good actress. She knew what she was doing, and she knew who she was in her characters in front of the camera. However, off camera, she really struggled with her confidence. She didn't really know how to socialize in the world because she was so used to one thing. So, getting thrown into the real world, you know, it's kind of hard to socialize. Your brain kind of mixes fiction with reality, and you don't really know how to differentiate the two. You know how to do one thing really well, but you don't quite know how to do the other thing very well, if that makes sense. So to kind of summarize all that, she was very vulnerable. You know, she was a young adult living in LA, doing a lot of good movies, getting a lot of recognition in the industry, and that made her very vulnerable. She was kind of like in this spotlight, and she was just kind of like, whoa, like, what am I doing here? You know what I mean? And when you are someone who is, you know, coming of age, you're a young adult, and when you meet someone like Marilyn Manson, you almost kind of see him as like the free escape, this kind of entryway into finding yourself, kind of becoming an adult, you know what I mean? Kind of this like swept off your feet feeling, this kind of, you see this person who's older, who's more experienced, and it's kind of like you see them as someone who can kind of teach you the ropes, I guess. Feeling that you can do anything together and nobody can stop you, and it's just you and this other person against the whole entire world, and like fuck everything. And that kind of free feeling is what every vulnerable, insecure, young adult wants to feel, okay? We crave that kind of thing, you know? We want to find ourselves so bad that we almost look for that in somebody else, when in reality you don't need to. But unfortunately, that's what happens, and I truly think that's what happened with Evan. You know, she was kind of like this, you know, meek little mouse in the corner, you know, up and coming, getting really big, and she met Manson, and she was like, oh my god, like, this is amazing. And it does also make it very easy for people who perpetrate abuse on people. It does make it very easy when you find someone like that, because they're already vulnerable, they're already weak, they already don't know what they want or who they are. So, I mean, that's also a win for them as well. I mean, not everyone's like that, but sometimes you meet the wrong people, okay? And that makes it very easy for them to do those kind of things. I said that in my last video as well, is you will notice that, you know, men usually who are, you know, physically, mentally, psychologically, sexually abusive, you will usually see a pattern of them going after younger women or whatever, because it's easier for them, because they're more vulnerable, they're more easy to manipulate. Now, not everybody, but it is definitely a thing. Then she got more into the beginnings of her and Marilyn Manson's relationship, you know, the first time he kissed her, how they would hang out all of the time, you know, how she would go on tour with him. And, you know, watching this, I couldn't help but become very overwhelmed with emotion, because a lot of this sounded so like blood chillingly similar to my experience from my past. And it was just kind of like, to listen to, you know what I mean? Just kind of difficult. And then she got into, now this is the first big thing I want to talk about in the first episode. She then got into the scarification and the blood pact thing that her and Manson did together, and she said that that was something that Manson did. It was a Manson thing to carve in, you know, the skin, or, you know, do blood pacts or become blood brothers or whatever. She said it was Manson's thing. I can tell you right now from experience, that is not just a Manson thing, and we're going to get into that right now. So back in the early 2000s, the early 2010s, it was actually, like, you'd be surprised, but it was actually disturbingly quite common for young people to do those types of things. And I'm going to share a story with you. So around 2007, I was around 13, 14 years old. So, you know, I was younger, and I got into my very first serious relationship. He was my first, you know, boyfriend. He was my first serious boyfriend. And when I tell you that I was absolutely head over fucking heels in love, obsessed with this person, it was actually kind of like sick, like that sick, like puppy love, you know what I mean? And you guys don't know him, so don't go down in the comments and speculate about who this boyfriend was. You guys have never met him, you don't know him. Kind of like middle school, high school, very serious boyfriend. And boy, oh boy, were we in love. Like, it was insane. And we were also huge fans of that scene, that kind of MySpace Vampire Freaks. You know, if you guys know what I'm talking about, this will make perfect sense to you. But there was literally like a whole scene with like the emo kids and the scene kids and the Manson fans and the Vampire Freaks and the MySpace people. You know, that was definitely a thing. It wasn't just a Manson thing. That was a thing back then. And me and this boyfriend, we actually cut open our fingers and shared our blood with each other, okay? Like, that was a thing. I've also carved initials into myself before, whether it was, you know, with friends or best friends or boyfriends. Like, we just did that. It was literally just a thing we would do. Like, I remember in middle school, I would walk into the bathroom and people would legit be carving into their skin or doing blood packs. Like, it was a thing. It was not just a Manson thing like Evan claimed. I'm sorry, but it was not. I don't think it's fair to say that it was a Manson thing that he only did to his women. I was doing it, and so were a million other young people, okay? If you were in that time, you know what I'm talking about. If you were a little emo kid on Vampire Freaks and MySpace, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know, like, there was like a whole group on MySpace where people legitimately thought that they were vampires, and they would drink blood, and they would post pictures of them on their MySpace drinking blood or cutting themselves open and drinking their blood. Like, it was a time, man. There was a certain part of MySpace, like, you know what I'm talking about. Like, you were friends with some really freaky people, but that was okay. That was just the scene back then, you know what I mean? Or, like, I remember when I was in middle school, like, we wouldn't necessarily use knives to carve initials into ourselves. We would sharpen a lead pencil, like a number 2 pencil that you take on, like, the MEEP test. You guys remember MEEP tests? We would take, like, number 2 pencils and sharpen them really, really sharp, and we would use that and just carve into our skin until it left a legitimate lead scar. Like, shit, that's what we did. I probably still have a scar on my ankle from when I used to do that. I mean, it's really fucked up now to think about, like, 13, 14, 15-year-olds just, like, carving themselves and sharing blood with their friends in the fucking middle school bathroom. But it was a thing. Like, when she was talking about that, it really wasn't a huge shock to me. Like, when she was like, yeah, like, I carved an M next to my vagina to show ownership. Like, I wasn't like, oh my God, that's terrible. I was just like, word. Like, I got you, have done it, been there, done that. Like, got it. Like, it just wasn't a shock for me to hear any of that. Now, some of the other things that she was talking about that she went through with Marilyn Manson, Brian Warner, a lot of the times I found her to be very genuine. I found her to be very believable, and that kind of hurt my heart a little bit, because I don't want to believe those things, because I love Marilyn Manson, like, truly fucking love Marilyn Manson. And it hurts me because I don't think she's lying about some of this. Like, I do think some of this actually may be true. And I do believe that Marilyn Manson, especially back then, I think now, especially with, like, interviews he's done with his 2020 album release, We Are Chaos, I do think that he was in a much better mind space. But I do think that back then, around, like, the early 2010s, middle of the 2010s, I do think that he was a very lost, disturbed person. I mean, I did read his book. I still own his book, and I've read that shit like 5 times. Now, I do understand that it was also ghostwritten, so some of it was kind of fabricated or blown out of proportion to make book sales. But, like, fuck, if you've ever read his book, like, you know, he had a rough childhood. Like, he saw things, experienced things that no child should. Is it an excuse for his alleged behavior? Absolutely not. But, like, he's a very unique individual, and if any of these accusations ever turn up with proof to be true, God damn him for this. It just pisses me off so much. How can such a smart, very deep, intuitive, intellectual person with a mind so powerful, but yet it was used for all the wrong things? Like, I will be so sad if any of this is proven to be true. Now, some of it I do think is true, and a lot of it I don't think is true. And I understand. It's Marilyn fucking Manson, okay? Like, he is a unique person. He has a unique look. He has unique music. He has unique ways of speaking. But, you know, a lot of people look at that and automatically think, oh my God, he's a bad person. But is he? Because a lot of us watching this, we don't know him personally. We don't live with him. We're not related to him. We don't know what goes on behind closed doors. So how much of Marilyn Manson is an act, and how much of it is actually truly him? You know, another thing I do want to touch on is because in my last video I talked about how Marilyn Manson, okay, this is such a personal topic. Really, nobody should be talking about this, but there was a lot of talk about his sex life, okay? Like, is he a kinky person? You know, is he vanilla in bed? As Evan Rachel Wood said in an article, that Marilyn Manson was actually kind of, you know, vanilla in bed, or he was very sweet in bed and he wasn't kinky at all. But then we'll hear stories about some of the most kinkiest shit that is so fucked up. So it's like, what is it? Like, I don't know. It's very personal. And I've also seen interviews of, I think it was the porn star Jenna Jameson. I could be wrong. Do not quote me on that. But I think she did an interview where she actually talked about a sexual encounter she had with Marilyn Manson. And she said one of his favorite things to do was to bite and suck on the inner elbow, okay? That's kind of kinky, right? I mean, not every day does your man, like, just suck on your inner elbow, right? But then also people will say that he's very vanilla or very sweet in bed. So it's like, how can someone be so evil and sexually abusive but yet so vanilla? I don't know. I don't get it. I'm just like, this is just wild. Now, I don't want to get too much into his sex life because that's none of our fucking business, okay? If you're not having sex with a man, stay the fuck out of it. But that was another thing I noticed, is that she would talk about all of these things that he would do to her that are just completely unimaginable. But then she would also say things like in past articles about how gentle and sweet and calm and vanilla he was in bed. So that was also very kind of confusing. Like, they're both such very talented individuals, and it just sucks that this is happening to both of them. Well, the rest of the first episode kind of talks about how Evan Rachel Wood went to a House of Reps to discuss getting the statute of limitations extended from 1 to 3 years to 7 to 10 years. Because she said that studies have shown that victims of domestic violence and sexual assault, it takes 7 to 10 years for them to feel safe and to realize that what they went through, that they were actually victims of this kind of abuse. And from personal experience, holy shit, does that make a lot of sense. Now, Evan Rachel Wood and her team for the Phoenix Act, they originally wanted to get the statute of limitations eliminated altogether, like completely, but obviously they can't do that. In the end, the bill actually ended up passing, but it was very quickly rewritten to only be extended 3 to 5 years. So they originally wanted it, to be eliminated completely, and then it was 1 to 3 extended to 7 to 10, and then once it passed, it was rewritten. So the statute of limitations in California for, I think, domestic violence and sexual assault, it was extended from 3 to 5 years. So it gives victims more time to do something about it, if that makes sense. And then later on in this episode, towards the end of the episode, and I don't know how they have legal grounds to do this, Evan Rachel Wood and her former girlfriend / activist girl, Ilmagor, however the hell you say her name, they started going around and collecting evidence from other survivors who had reached out, who had experienced similar things that they went through with Marilyn Manson. And Evan Rachel Wood and Ilmagor collected all of that to bring it to authorities. Now, that seemed kind of weird to me because Evan Rachel Wood and Ilmagor, they're not investigators. They don't work with law enforcement. They don't work with the FBI. So I don't know how them collecting evidence, I don't see how they have any grounds to do that. And I don't see how that would help them. I feel like if you have evidence, you need to go directly to the appropriate parties with that and not go to Evan Rachel Wood for that. You know what I mean? Like, cool, I get it. Like, they're trying to take action. But at the same time, like, I don't think you can do that. If you want to open a criminal investigation against somebody or you want to bring charges against somebody, you need to take what you have and you need to go directly to the people that you need to go to. And it's also kind of come about that Evan Rachel Wood and Ilmagor allegedly were reaching out to these people, trying to convince them to come up with evidence or convince them to come forward. So, I mean, I can kind of see that since they were the one reaching out to all of these survivors. I was like, why the fuck are you doing this? Like, focus on your own case. Like, let these people do what they want with their evidence. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. I thought that was weird. And as of today, like I said, there are absolutely no criminal charges up against Marilyn Manson at the moment. Evan Rachel Wood did go to the FBI, and 6 months after that, there was still nothing on the case. They just, like, I'm sorry, but they just don't have anything, really. Like, is it because of lack of proof and evidence? Is it the statute of limitations? I don't know. Because, in America, especially, if you want to bring these kind of criminal charges against somebody, that's just the way it is here. You have to have proof. An old scar that you carved yourself next to your vagina is not evidence. I'm sorry, because you did it willingly. He carved an E and you carved an M. It was like, that's not evidence, okay? Like, you knew what you were doing. You can't use that as evidence, and you really don't have any solid proof. There's no solid proof yet. I haven't seen any. And what we have seen has been debunked or dismissed. It's all very interesting. Marilyn Manson's legal team did make a couple of statements about these allegations that Evan Rachel Wood made against him, but really nothing else has been said. And then Marilyn Manson sued Evan Rachel Wood on March 2nd of 2022. And the Google Doc with his case is still in his Instagram bio if you guys would like to go read that. Very, very crazy stuff in there. Like I said, Evan Rachel Wood posing as an FBI agent. It's all very messy, okay? But so far, Marilyn Manson has been pretty quiet about this whole thing. Like, he hasn't talked to anybody, he hasn't talked to reporters, he hasn't made any fucking documentaries. So far, like, this first episode, as you can tell, it had a lot in it. There was a lot going on in this one. It was a very, very powerful, very well done documentary. Like, I actually really enjoyed it, even though it was very disturbing to watch. Let me know what you guys think, because wow, 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 wow. Hopefully you guys enjoyed episode 1. I will be filming episode 2 right now directly after this. It may be up a couple of days after this video, so just make sure you have your notifications on so you know when that video goes up. But I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, go down, give a huge thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on the next video. Thank you so much for watching. I love you all very, very much. Remember to please look after yourself and please take care of yourself. If these videos are just too hard to watch and you can't handle them, I totally understand, okay? I totally understand. I love you. Please take care of yourself, and I will see you very soon in my next video. I love you. Bye!